Hey, YouTube, I guess I might as well go ahead and get this video, make this video and get it over with and put it off long enough. And I don't know why I like making these videos. It's a huge source of self-expression for me. It's an anxiety reliever. I like making videos. I don't. And I like a lot of the work that I do if everything goes right and so forth. I like what I do. But I think it's just a matter of I don't like making videos sometimes and leaving comments because you don't really know if it goes right. And I worry, can people even see what I'm doing? And then there's also the issue that I'm going to fuck up or I'm going to say something stupid or, it can be very peaceful and it can relieve anxiety and it can also be very anxiety causing and it can be both. But I just want to make this video on men's rights activism and on the men's rights or male rights movement. And I want to make this video on, I guess, really feminists and feminism and how, I guess, to get to the point, sorry. That was fast. Okay. Feminists misunderstand men's rights activists, or more importantly, let's start this way. What if I told you that men's rights activism doesn't mean that you're against feminism necessarily? And it certainly doesn't mean that you're anti-female. And I want to talk about that and go into that and go into the details about what male rights activism is and how I think feminists misunderstand us. And I don't want to be mansplaining, but I think since I was a men's rights activist, and again, I don't want you to think that I would identify as that because I'm still sticking with the humanist label because I am a humanist. Because, but back to the point, let's just finish this part of the video. I don't want to be mansplaining, as you say, and I don't even understand that. And I'm not trying to be a smartass, but the point is, since I am not only am I a man or male, but I'm also a male rights activist, or I was, and I'm a humanist. And I think that I should be able to explain what the fuck I'm talking about. And I think I would know more than you about this because I'm that. So let me explain this. And I don't identify as a male rights activist. First of all, let me say that I'm a humanist. And I am a humanist. And I think that is more important. And I think that men's rights activism or men's rights activists that label can be very limiting. Because I think that men's rights activism would cover a lot. But even if you're talking about men, it can still be a situation where maybe I want to put more emphasis on certain things that may or may not directly correlate with being an MRA or a men's rights activist. And then there is the larger issue of not everything is about men. I'm also an environmentalist and I'm an animal rights supporter. And that's not directly tied to being a men's rights activist, or probably even indirectly. And there's also the issue of some of the female issues and feminist issues I do care about, and I do care about female rights. And I'm going to go into that in a minute. But I just want to say that men's rights activists are what it says in the title, or in the name itself. It says men's rights activists. Or a better phrase would be male rights activists, because we are also supportive of transgender people who no longer identify as male. We are supportive of transgender people who might have been born a female but identify as male now, but maybe society doesn't see them that way. We are supportive of male teenagers and children and infants who are not men, they're males, and it's about being pro-male. And I care about the rights and issues of males, and that's why I'm against circumcision of male infant children. And I think that's a disgusting practice that should come to an end. And I have even seen where feminists are against that, and some feminists have spoken out against that, but I don't think that it's largely on their radar, and they don't really seem to be as much against it. But I also do care about, and I was going into detail as a humanist, I care about abortion and abortion rights. And I think women should have a right to abortion in the first 4 months. And I know some people would stretch it longer than that. I'm not one of those people. But I do think a woman should have a right to choose what to do with her body, whether or not she's going to have a child or a kid. And I think you can choose in 4 months whether or not to do that. And after that, it becomes too risky because I don't want to take a chance of killing an infant. And I think that if you're rating past 4 months, you could do that. But also, I care about female rights issues in terms of girls having their ears pierced. That's still legal, and some people still do that in this country. And I don't think you should pierce a girl's ears. I don't think that's right. I don't think that should be legal. And I also care about other female issues. Those are the first two that come to mind. But I also care about, or I do care about, what was the other issue? Well, I care about transgender issues, transgender female issues. And that transgender largely identify as females, and I see them as females, and I care about their rights and their issues. And I do think that that could be looked at as a feminist issue, and I will give feminists and feminism some credit. Some of them have supported that, and there has also been what they call turf feminist or anti. There are more exclusionary of transgender females, but some are pro transgender, and there are intersectional feminists that are a little bit different. But and that's really what I support, by the way, is intersectional men's rights activism. I think we need the same thing for men, and I myself am personally a humanist. But I also think you can't really talk about men in some ways, and maybe this is ignorance on my part, or maybe it's arrogance. But I don't think you can talk about men's issues and men's rights issues without talking about gay issues. And I think that's especially true. Oh God, I knew it would happen. I think that is especially true if you were talking about teenagers and teenage males who are being bullied, who are being labeled gay. And I think gay rights, in some ways, gay shaming especially, that affects I think boars or men or males as teenagers. I think in some ways that affects them more than females because there's lots of lesbians that are hated on and there are hate crimes against lesbians. But I think when you are talking about boars, even boars who aren't really gay, there was always that question of, is he gay? Are you gay? And they called boars gay. And um, there's I've even seen like a game, like Smear the Career. I used to hear about that. And they would have they if they thought someone was gay or they just didn't like somebody, sometimes they would try to tackle them. And I've heard of that happens. And there's just a hatred of gays, and they're saying, "Are you gay?" And they're asking that question, but they're doing so in a way that is assuming you are, and that it's bad to be gay, and they're saying that. And I think that there is also an issue there with homophobia and homophobic politics and identity issues, where it's like almost like they're questioning whether or not a man is a human being. And there's this issue of what is gay, and gay is more effeminate, and it's like as a man you're not allowed to be more effeminate, and it's what the feminists talk about, and they talk about, and they're right in a lot of cases, is toxic masculinity. And I don't think they ever really understand and respect this, how much of an issue that is for men and males, because it's almost like you're not allowed to show emotion. And, it's like you're not allowed to cry if you're a man. And of course, I mean, I'm not saying anyone should be as big of a crybaby as my ass. Um, on any given month, I probably spend like about half the nights out of that month before I go to bed. At some point, I will probably crawl up into a ball on my bed and cry for about an hour. No one should do that, and that's probably not healthy. But I mean, still, people should have a right to show emotion, and people should have a right to show a more compassion and effeminate side of themselves. And we can be nurturing, and we can be the same thing, some of the same things females are, and we're not just these mindless, emotionless drones that go overseas and bomb things. I mean, that's not all a man is. A man can be very much like a female, and a man can have a very positive side. And I don't think we're allowed to show that. We're not allowed to show our femininity in the same way that females are. And again, it's very negative to be a gay. And bisexuality among men, I mean, there's almost this question of, is bisexuality in some cases even real? I've heard people argue that. Um, it's accepted as a fact among females, but I've seen people deny, including even some gay people, say, well, you're not really bi. I've seen that in my life. You're either gay or straight, or you're just gay. I mean, and there are bisexuals, and I myself am in some ways bisexual. And the gender queer issue, I mean, there are a lot of men that have a very effeminate side to them, and a side that is very interested not only in femininity in an introverted personality sense, but they also want to express that. And there are men that have a side of themselves very interested in exploring drag and drag clothing and drag queen issues. And there are men that want to look more effeminate, and they like to play with fashion and female fashion, and they're not always men. I mean, and it's not as simple as, well, I'm just a man. And again, the point that I'm making about all this is none of this should oppose females. Now, there are issues that feminists might be more directly tied to. I know that there are issues with family courts and alimony, but I don't know much about that, and I've not studied that in a long time. I used to study it more, and I know that some men's rights activists are very concerned about issues concerning divorce and things like that. But I have also seen many women screwed over by courtrooms and screwed over in the court. having to do with family. So that's not necessarily a male issue, but it might be proportionally male. And I mean, it's something that should be looked into. But I have also seen, by the way, and I have talked about this before, is the story of Chase, where there was a woman that was trying to help her son. So she got screwed over out of a court system where she was trying to keep her son from being, circumcised or genitally mutilated pretty much at 6 years old. And it was the fucking father that wanted it done. So she was trying to help her son, keeping him from being fucked over. And it was the fucking father that wanted it. And they fucked her over and she went to jail and everything else. And the father won the case. So I guess they got to mutilate the son. And she even had to go, went to jail. She was pretty much forced to sign the papers and everything. And that was a female. And the man got what he wanted in that case. And it was supposed to be really the mother had custody. So it didn't even make sense. But it had something to do with some paperwork that she signed when they were still together. And he was exploiting this. And he was a very manipulative man in this case, not a woman, but a man, holding this over her head. So it's not always an issue as simple as, well, it's a men's rights issue. There are men that get screwed over in courtrooms and family court and in cases of alimony, but it's not always that way. And I have seen other cases where women are screwed over in alimony cases and they're paying off huge, large sums of alimony to men. And I mean, that has happened. But the point is, none of this should be opposed to feminism. And I think the problem that a lot of feminists have, or what happened. But I think the problem that a lot of feminists have with men's rights activists is they presume us to be misogynist. And I think there's an issue there, and they presume us to be anti them or against their rights and their issues. And I think that there is an issue there of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy or an accusation of us being against women. And then they do things that are oppositional to us and in some ways suppress us. And then many of us will have a backlash. We have the predictable backlash against that. And you have some men's rights activists that don't like feminists. But I do not know of any men's rights activist that specifically really identifies as anti-feminist, unless he's some kind of, teenager incel or something that's from he doesn't even know what he's talking about. I mean, you might have those people. But any legitimate real men's rights activist that has studied the survey, none of us, or not survey, I don't know what the fuck that was, but it's study, none of us Christians or none of us identifies as anti-feminist. And if we were anti-feminist, we would say we're anti-feminist. And they have anti-feminists. And a lot of those people, by the way, are really what is called conservative. And really all a conservative is a lower level lackey for the neocon or the neoconservatives. And you need to really look up or research Project for a New American Century if you want to know more about that. But they don't care about men either. And they do oppose real legitimate women's rights issues rights like the right to have an abortion. And that's almost what worries me is that I have seen in the past feminists deny men's rights activists who are working with us, and they have chosen instead to work with religious organizations that oppose abortion rights, along with LGBTQ issues. And I have seen that, and they had even worked with religious institutions once in the 70s, and later on, I think maybe 15 years ago, they worked with religious institutions that were anti-abortion and anti-gay for that matter. Just because they were against porn, because they wanted at the time, these people did not want men to see porn. And you also have males and especially females in the porn industry that are making a living doing that, and they're denying their ability to engage in their source of income because that's what they do for a living. And they were willing to work with these Christian bigots and zealots just because they wanted to keep men and some women who like porn from being able to watch the porn they want to watch. And they did that. And there's a lot of weird stuff. And there was even a case once where Gloria Steinem was leading a bunch of nuns around New York City and Times Square screaming shame at fucking porno theaters before Times Square got fucked up by Giuliani, before he tried to clean up New York, like some kind of modern prohibitionist, just some horrible shit. So that's odd. And I don't see how anyone could see that as liberal. But the point is, we are not directly opposed to feminists, and if they want to work with us, and I would hope that they would, then we will work with them. And I think if nothing else, we should certainly be able to coexist together because we're not that different. And in fact, we probably have more in common than we do different. And I think the main difference here is a gender difference. And that is why, in part, I don't identify as a feminist anymore. Or not feminist, but a men's rights activist. I identify as a humanist. I care about human beings. And I forget, there was another issue I wanted to cover. It was transgender, ear piercing, and abortion, and I support all of that for women. And there was something else I wanted to talk about, women's rights, but I can't think of what. But I care about largely about transgender women, especially, and male to female. And I think part of that is because I do have a history of gender dysphoria and gender dysphoric issues. And I think that I will admit that, and I will even admit that I do have a little bit of a preferential view of men's issues and a little bit of a bias, or a little bit of an increased concern for men or male issues and more over female issues, just because I am a man or I am a male, and I know what that is like, and I know what it's like to be a male, and I know it largely sucks. So because I know what it's like, I have that. But at the same time, I care greatly about women's issues too, legitimate women's issues. And and I also care about the female genital mutilation or female circumcision, especially clitorectomy. And it's not always a clitorectomy, but always a clitorectomy rather. But I'm against any form of female genital mutilation, just like I am male genital mutilation, wherever it happens. And of course, fortunately for them, it doesn't happen in America any longer. And I don't know I'm not sure how often it ever happened or how widespread it became. But in any country or wherever it doesn't happen, I'm against that. And I support females and feminist rights issues and rights, just the same as I support men's human rights and men's rights activism and men's rights. And even though I'm a humanist, I do support men's rights. Fuck me. But anyways, I do support men's rights. And if it is possible to support feminists that are not radical and not fringe nuts or ring nuts, and I also, for that matter, support feminist rights. And what we really need to do is it's journey into the hard work and do the hard work, or that long march into tearing down genders, and really not just gender, but changing our society altogether and creating a more reasonable system for everyone. But I think that, whether we create new genders or we just tear it down and we just let people be what they want, and that's largely what I advocate for. I advocate for personally. I do support feminism in a legitimate way, and I think the majority of men's rights activists do. And I know one thing they say about us that is just not true is that we're against abortion. Well, I have never known really any men or male rights activists that ever talk much about abortion, and their concern for abortion or their issue for abortion is either they are for abortion, as I am, or support, for a woman's right to have an abortion, rather. And that is what I care about, that they have a right to consent to do that. Or they don't give a fuck one way or the other, and that's probably a lot of them too. But I've known very few that are against abortion, but there are some that are against abortion. But then again, that's because we are a motley crew, and we are a very diverse and large-ranging group of individuals that call ourselves men's rights activists or male rights activists. And it's not right to paint us with this larger, all-encompassing broad brush of, well, you're a men's rights activist and you're a misogynist and you must be against a woman's right to choose abortion and that kind of thing, because we're not. And that's why, I work for a woman's right to choose an abortion. And I work against piercing girls' ears and things like that. And you should be working against circumcision or the genital mutilation. And you should be working against circumcision or the genital mutilation of baby boys too. Because I'm against ear piercing, and I'm for your right to an abortion in the first 4 months, and you should be against circumcision of babies and against genital mutilation of children, male children, or any child for that matter. And to the feminists who do that good, for the ones that don't, you should really shape up and start to do good for everyone. And that is why I'm a humanist. So I don't really identify as a male rights activist or men's rights activist, like I said, but I still respect them and I'm not against them. And I don't think they get a fair deal or a good rap in the media. And I think the media, once again, the corporations, the banks, for their various reasons, they control things and want to paint things a way that suits them and their interests. And they're wrong, they're lying. And that's all I want you to know. We're not against feminists or females. P666.